Tonight on CBC Vancouver News. A small BC community in shock.
It's definitely a somber day for sure.
An officer is dead and another badly hurt after an avalanche in Kaslo. Plus, skepticism over the province's push to fast-track foreign-trained nurses.
They will help alleviate some of the real critical burdens, but they're just not sufficient.
Will the new plan lead to better health care? And why a seniors hockey team in Squamish is being iced out of puck time.
The whole process I found to be very disrespectful because there was no consultation with us.
The connection to BC's housing market.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Anita Bath. An officer is dead and another in critical condition tonight. They got caught in an avalanche in BC's interior. This comes the day after warnings that right now conditions are the most dangerous they've been in decades. Renee Filipponi has our top story.
Remote and beautiful, this part of BC attracts adventure seekers, but it can be deadly. 2 Nelson police officers rode snowmobiles to this isolated cabin north of Kaslo, BC. They went skiing here, and then tragedy. An avalanche bore down and buried them. Another group of skiers called for help.
So they had used avalanche transceivers to be able to locate the other person in the avalanche and at least recover his body. He had to dig quite a lot to be able to recover the body.
43-year-old Constable Wade Tiddamore died. He was an avid outdoorsman, a husband and father.
Wade was a hard worker, a skilled officer, and a dedicated family man. He was a mentor and example to many of our junior officers.
Constable Mathieu Nollet was rescued. He's in hospital with serious injuries. Today, the small community of Nelson is in mourning.
I do have family members in the force, not Nelson PD, but in the RCMP. So it kind of hits close to home, but it's definitely a somber day for sure.
Avalanches in this area are extremely powerful, strong enough to destroy buildings and vehicles. This is the aftermath of what's being called a Stage 3 event.
We've had an extreme drought event that's led to multiple buried persistent weak layers in our snowpack, and it really is a house of cards at this point. It's really hard to trust anything.
The dangers of going into these areas.
Right now, the avalanche risk in parts of BC's interior ranges from intermediate to high, and experts say even experienced people are at risk.
Once search and rescue gets involved, unfortunately, 99% of the time, it's a recovery. You have about 15 minutes to find your partner and get them out.
That warning sadly confirmed again for anyone headed into the backcountry this season. Renee Filipponi, CBC News, Vancouver.
This accident naturally has shaken the local community. Nelson is about an hour away, and that's where the officers worked. Corey Bullock joins us live from there tonight. Corey, accidents like this are hard for everyone, but in small towns in particular where a lot of people know each other.
Yes, it's a very family community. Many people I spoke with said that it's difficult to talk about. It's still peaceful. Flags are at half-mast here at City Hall and at the Nelson Police Department. Some people have left flowers out. One common thread is that Nelson has lost a beloved community member. This young officer is remembered as a hard worker and a family man. One person I spoke to said that it's a tragedy not only to lose a community member, but someone who serves and protects the community as well.
It's definitely sad. I heard it this morning, and it was definitely sad news. I do have family members in the force, not Nelson PD, but in the RCMP. So it kind of hits close to home, but it's definitely a somber day for sure.
It just sucks for the community, to lose a community member, and especially someone from the force,
We are just having a little bit of a technical issue there with Corey Bullock's audio. But as you can see, people in Nelson and Kaslo and the region are feeling the loss tonight. We are now going to go to Kuljit Kala, who is in for meteorologist Johanna Wagstaff. We know avalanche conditions, Kuljit, right now are the worst in decades. What are you seeing for the days ahead?
We're seeing lots of warnings still across the province. We'll skip right ahead to that for avalanche warnings from Avalanche Canada. The areas that we were talking about in the southern interior, of course, still sitting under a considerably high risk of avalanche. The yellow meaning moderate. We are not even really seeing any areas where there's, extreme conditions, which is good, but this is very unusual for this time of year. There are a lot of spots all the way up towards Dease Lake, Williams Lake, through Prince George, and almost all the way up to Mackenzie as well for this area. It's the southern interior, parts of Whistler and parts of Vancouver Island that are of concern right now. So we'll keep you updated on that. Temperatures across BC tomorrow, going to see some snow with some sun and clouds for Prince George, 0 degrees. Sunny for Williams Lake mostly tomorrow, 2 degrees there. And then rain all along the coast, 6 degrees for Prince Rupert and raining, and lots of rain coming for Dease Lake, -11. So it's going to be quite cold through there. We saw the sun set just before 4:35, 8 degrees in clouds, rises again under clouds tomorrow. And then tomorrow morning, Wednesday morning, 60% chance of that rain returning. How much are we going to get and how long is it going to last is a big story for us here as well in the Lower Mainland. And I'll have those details coming up. Anita?
Okay, we'll talk to you soon. Thanks. Well, homicide investigators are talking to neighbors and gathering evidence at the Fraser Heights home where 3 bodies were found yesterday. Police in Surrey say they believe the 3 adults were related and there are no outstanding suspects. Today, community members dropped off flowers outside the home. Mayor Baines was at the scene.
David Eby making another announcement on changes to nursing.
It is a remarkable shift, and I don't want that to be missed.
The province promising nurses trained in Canada up to $4,000 to cover applications, assessments and travel costs, and $10,000 in bursaries for additional education. And for nurses trained abroad.
We do apologize. We are having another technical issue there, and we will try to get back to that story with Mira Baines shortly. For now, there is criticism today with how UBC has handled the controversy around former professor Mary-Ellen Trepel-Lafond. She's well known for once being BC's children and families advocate. In the fall, a CBC investigation found that despite her claims of being Indigenous, genealogical evidence shows Trepel-Lafond is of European ancestry. She's no longer working at the university, but Jeff Leo is looking at some internal emails around what actually happened.
Today, CBC broke the story about Mary-Ellen Trepel-Lafond's European ancestry. UBC issued a statement to the Globe and Mail defending her. It praised her work as a law professor and as the head of UBC's Indian Residential School History and Dialogue Centre. The university said it would have no comment on her Indigenous identity claims because her ancestry played no role in her hiring. But Professor Daniel Justice says when he and his Indigenous colleagues demanded answers and accountability from Trepel-Lafond and UBC, the university went silent.
The university comes out very strong in defense of her at the beginning, never acknowledges anybody else, right? So it's hard not to look at all of that and feel a little bit abandoned.
According to UBC, as of December 16th, Trepel-Lafond is no longer with the university. She told other media outlets that she has retired to spend more time with her family and to explore her spirituality. But UBC won't say anything at all about her departure. It says it can't because of labor legislation. But some people question that excuse.
Even just to say we are investigating would have been a huge leap forward at some point during the last almost 3 months. You know, UBC looks like a very closed-door place for people to want to express concerns about something that affects us all.
In an internal email leaked to CBC, UBC officials said they wanted to avoid doing, quote, damage control. They added that until now it has relied on the honor system when determining if someone is Indigenous. It says it will be working on a new policy that will require some proof of Indigenous ancestry. Daniel Justice says he wants a review of the hiring decisions around Mary-Ellen Trepel-Lafond as well.
I guess my concern is if we don't do some looking back, how are we going to know what went wrong so that we don't replicate it again.
UBC says later this month it'll be meeting with Indigenous faculty and staff to talk about next steps. Jeff Leo, CBC News, Regina.
There's criticism tonight over significant new changes to how nurses can get licensed in BC. Now, the province is promising up to 2,000 could be on the ground working within a few months. But as Michelle Gassoub tells us, longtime advocates are skeptical and wonder if the changes go far enough.
David Eby making another announcement on changes to nursing.
It is a remarkable shift, and I don't want that to be missed.
The province promising nurses trained in Canada up to $4,000 to cover applications, assessments, and travel costs, and $10,000 in bursaries for additional education. And for nurses trained abroad, $1.3 million to streamline the licensing process, with the goal of decreasing the registration waiting period from 3 years to 4 to 9 months. Eby says with the changes, 2,000 new nurses could be working within just 90 days. But experts question whether that number is realistic given a backlog of applications.
A lot of it is just bogged down in bureaucracy, that there's not enough people who are actually doing the work of verifying qualifications.
Monday's announcement marked the province's third attempt to improve nurse recruitment in the past year, but longtime advocates say it will take more to undo the harm done by years of policies that have kept internationally trained nurses on the sidelines.
It's just bureaucracy on top of bureaucracy on top of bureaucracy that has made it so difficult unnecessarily and has disenfranchised a lot of people that has moved.
The changes come as most healthcare settings face massive staffing shortages amid a surge in respiratory illnesses, which has pushed the system over capacity, leading to more calls for change.
They're just not sufficient. We need to actually be educating more nurses. And the big thing we need to do is actually keep the nurses that we have in the system.
Many grateful to see the system streamlined, but say their advocacy is far from over.
We will still call for other things. We will still need to think outside the box to be able to get this happening, because the need is out there.
Over 5,000 nursing positions in this province are now vacant, and 26,000 new nurses will be needed by 2031. Michelle Gassoub, CBC News, Vancouver.
And if you're among the thousands of people in BC waiting for a Nexus application to be finished or renewed, some encouraging news tonight. The Canada Border Services Agency and U.S. Department of Homeland Security say they expect a new enrollment option for air travelers to be ready in the spring. That would include CBSA interviews at reopened enrollment centres here in BC and separate U.S. Customs interviews in all Canadian airports. Nexus card processing has been disrupted because of a fight over whether U.S. employees should have diplomatic-style immunity while working at Nexus processing centres in this country. That has led to a backlog of 300,000 applications. Officials now say they've reduced that backlog to about 100,000. And the Royal BC Museum is asking for help from the public to figure out its future. The ask comes after the province initially planned to fund a new museum and was met with backlash for the cost. Starting Thursday, the Royal BC Museum is launching a public engagement process. It will include in-person and virtual dialogue sessions. There will be consultation with members from multiple groups, including Indigenous communities, students, and those with accessibility needs. The museum says that community engagement is key to make sure any future redevelopment has the public support this time. An increasing goose problem all over Vancouver Island has the Capital Regional District looking at ways to manage the situation in and around Victoria specifically. The population of geese on the island is estimated to be around 10 to 15,000. Data tracking shows the geese are starting to move into areas they haven't been before, including islets off the coast. The geese are wreaking havoc on local ecology, with economic and social impacts being felt. They're destroying crops and estuaries. So now the CRD is looking at ways to limit their destruction.
We are going through an alternative approval process where the general public is given the opportunity to weigh in if they think that what we're proposing is a bad idea. What we're proposing is to have a Canada geese management strategy that would involve culling of animals as well as egg addling.
Residents have until January 23rd to vote on the CRD's goose management strategy. The population is apparently doubling every 4 years. The CRD plans to work with regional districts, local governments, and First Nations if the strategy goes forward. Let's go back to Surrey now with Mira Baines looking at the situation with 3 family members found dead inside a Fraser Heights home yesterday. Today, community members dropped off flowers.
Sad. Devastated family friends are showing up at a home in Surrey's Fraser Heights neighborhood. Police found the bodies of 3 adults inside the house Monday. Word spread fast through WeChat about the deaths, according to one neighbor. Friends say a couple and their adult son worked as tutors.
She always smiling, help people, very friendly to neighbors, to all the students. All the couple they graduated from Beijing University in China.
Juan Zhao says the father is Leo Lee, who met his wife Tiffany when they both worked at Metrotown. He studied computers and she opened a tutoring business and taught French.
It's very decent family. They like the life very much. They enjoy the life. They enjoy the Canada's life, and they feel so blessing. And they also appreciate all the neighborhood, everything.
Eventually, Zhao says Leo Lee started tutoring too, and so did their son Daniel, who had attended university in Victoria. Police say preliminary evidence suggests there are no outstanding suspects, but they're not ruling out any investigative theory. The Integrated Homicide Investigation Team says information from the scene indicates murder-suicide.
It appears to be so. The evidence that we've collected at the scene does suggest that the incident is confined to the 3 individuals that were found within their residence.
Police say they have contacted some immediate family members. Throughout the day, friends and neighbors came to the scene to mourn the Lee family.
I just heard from the community, and the neighbors told me what happened here. So yeah, so we and my friends, we just came here to put the flower here.
Investigators say they're speaking to neighbors as they continue to gather evidence. Mira Baines, CBC News, Surrey.
And staying in Surrey, where a piece of farmland some call the most fertile in BC is a step closer to avoid getting paved over. The province is holding a rare public hearing to decide whether the parcel should be protected for food growth. The Campbell Heights property is owned by the federal government and leased to farmers. It's currently zoned, though, as industrial land, and warehouses have gone up all around it. The family farming the 220-acre piece says not putting it into the agricultural land reserve and allowing development would be a major hit to the province's food security and force British Columbians to be more reliant on imported produce.
I think it's very advantageous for everyone in British Columbia to care about what happens to this piece of land here because of how crucial of a piece it is in the food security puzzle of British Columbia.
The Agricultural Land Commission will hold the public hearing later this month. Well, some Kelowna residents are turning heads, but not for the reasons you may expect. A duo of fainting goats have taken to the streets, and they're gaining fans wherever they go.
So I take them for walks and that, and it also exercises them, and it exposes them to different noises so they don't spook as much, i.e. the fainting part of their breed.
Lexus and Miata are 2 one-year-old female miniature silky fainting goats from Summerland. Their owner first got the goats to keep his lawn under control without having to resort to a gas-powered mower. He's been running errands together with Lexus and Miata since the fall. And their favorite stop, you guessed it, they are Canadian, Tim Hortons for a cinnamon raisin bagel. Crowder plans on getting 2 more female fainting goats this spring. All right, Squamish is one of the fastest growing communities in BC, and that's putting pressure on local infrastructure, including the town's only ice rink. Because of high demand, a hockey team of older adults had their ice time moved to the graveyard shift. And that's a change that's forced many of the players to quit. As Janella Hamilton reports, the competition for ice time has created a barrier for local seniors wanting to stay active.
Some of these seniors have been coming to this arena since it was built 45 years ago. A community hub to play hockey and build lifelong friendships on and off the ice.
A big part of it is the getting out for the physical activity on a regular basis and also the social interaction with the other guys.
The Hilltop hockey team has been playing together for close to 2 decades, but now the program's future is being threatened after the district changed this year's ice time to 10:45 on a Sunday night.
2/3 of the group that plays with us have to get up and go to work in the morning. So 2/3 of our group decided not to play.
Ramage says the team has gone from roughly 50 players last season to 17 players this year.
When we were younger, we used to come out and play at those 10:30 midnight times, and it was adequate, but it just doesn't work for most seniors.
The town's mayor says demand far outweighs the facility's capacity, given the arena has just one sheet of ice. Since 2016, Squamish has seen a 22% increase in population and is the second fastest growing population center in BC. Today, the town is home to more than 24,000 residents, many of whom are younger families.
What we're seeing here, I believe, is very much a symptom of historical underinvestment in our facilities.
In July, the District of Squamish received $11.7 million in federal funding that will go towards upgrades to Brennan Park Recreation Center. But Herford says it'll be years before shovels are in the ground.
First and foremost are things like our new fire halls that we've undertaken, and we have a public works facility that needs to happen.
The whole process I found to be very disrespectful because there was no consultation with us.
Herford says staff is reviewing the ice allocation process and policy and hopes to come up with a better solution for these seniors and what's left of their team by next season. Janella Hamilton, CBC News, Squamish.
It's a royal memoir that's already making record sales. After the break, how Prince Harry's new book may be remembered for its influence on the monarchy. Thanks for staying with us during our commercial-free live stream tonight. A convenience store in Montreal's East End has opened up with a twist. It only sells products made by local brands. Now, the goal is to build better relationships with local suppliers and makers, and of course, be friendlier to the planet. Kobina Aduro has more.
Every time Mary Victoire Bergeret is in the area, she comes into the store to buy her lunch or just to look around.
It's really nice. It's very refreshing. It's also really nice to look at everything. Like everything, it's so pretty also.
Tous les Choses Parfait opened its doors over a year ago. Everything sold here is made in Canada, mostly in Quebec. You can find your dairy, hygiene products, and pretty much anything you would get at a regular dépanneur.
Everybody is happy to come in here. They are all amazed by the beautiful products we have, so it's never like a job. The hardest part is not to buy everything by myself.
Staff say local products are cheaper than imported ones, and dealing with local suppliers makes the job more enjoyable.
The winemakers and everything, most of them, they come here by themselves to show the product, so it's like a really nice relation that is really important to keep.
So it connects to my values, and also this means that it doesn't travel from far away. So yeah, there's less pollution from all the transporting.
This nutrition expert says the pandemic raised awareness about the importance of buying local.
The more support for the local food system will benefit the strength of the food system in that area and the local economy. So that is undeniable that supporting local will have very good benefits for the local economy.
The dépanneur is trying to go even further by bringing in more Montreal-based companies like this chocolate. That's because it tastes really good. Kobina Aduro, CBC News, Montreal.
Prince Harry's memoir just keeps making waves. Released officially today, it is already setting sales records. It's a portrait of his own story, a life shaped by love, but also discord and distrust. Margaret Evans has more on the book titled Spare and its impact on the monarchy.
Preparing for the big launch, but Prince Harry has been staking out his position for some time now. And after days of leaked highlights, confessional interviews, and the ease of online ordering, media packs on the hunt for people waiting for bookshops to open their doors found themselves having to share.
Are you excited to read it?
The book's narrative, 400 pages of it, swings. From moving accounts of Harry's struggle to accept his mother's death as a child, to petty grievances hung out in a public airing cupboard.
You hurt my feelings, Meghan.
This is Harry reading a section on tensions between his wife and sister-in-law.
Kate's eyes widened. Yes, you talked about my hormones. We're not close enough for you to talk about my hormones. Meg's eyes got wide too.
Critics say focus on the salacious details of the split between the father, the heir, and the so-called spare has pushed aside any meaningful examination of the potential impact of Harry's allegations against the monarchy on its long-term health.
In terms of the soap opera, yeah, Harry's a guy in pain. He wrote his memoir. The problem is that's breaking royal protocol. Where does that leave the trust within the family? Where does that leave the family? And the institution is the family.
An institution many here have counted on to define Britain in times of trouble through the uncertain aftermath of Brexit or the global pandemic. That was before the Queen's death. Harry's book adds a new challenge to the monarchy, asking people to pick a side.
I don't think that you can terrorize a 1,000-year-old establishment. I don't think that will ever break down.
Do we need it, especially at a time like this? No.
The book has already become the UK's fastest-selling in non-fiction ever.
It's like kind of war games now. And my worry is, where does it go from here?
One place it won't be going is away, not with King Charles' coronation in the offing and speculation about who will or won't be attending already rife. Margaret Evans, CBC News, London.
Now, locally, the release of Spare has caused a flurry of excitement at several bookstores. At Monroe's Books in Victoria, demand for the new novel is extremely high. They say there were dozens of pre-orders leading up to the release, with sales in line with the release of Michelle Obama's memoir. Today, readers have filled into the store to get their hands on a copy.
Especially in Victoria here, we have a huge kind of British expat population and just Anglophile population where people are very interested in anything to do with Britain, especially the royal family. And with Harry being in the media so much, and with he and Meghan having been on the island temporarily back in, 2020, I think that just invigorated interest in the two of them as a couple and kind of the future of the monarchy as it is.
I'm curious about the royal family. I've followed them for decades. I hope he finds more peace in his life. Yeah.
What do you think you might find in the book?
Some scandal. And maybe a little more insight into how that family really does operate behind the curtain.
There are already more than 1,000 holds for the memoir at the Vancouver Public Library. Now, for more on this, I'm joined live tonight by Peter McNally, Professor Emeritus at McGill University's School of Information Studies. Peter, Oprah, the Netflix series, the ITV interview, 60 Minutes. Is it overkill? Are people getting sick of Harry?
Well, you really wonder, don't you? Just whenever you think people have had too much, suddenly something else comes, like today's biography, and boy, everybody's in there buying copies of it. Here in Montreal, I went to a local bookstore in downtown Montreal, and there was a big display inside the door, and the sales clerk said, yes, people are coming in and purchasing it, so it goes on and on.
What is it, do you think, that is making Canadian people so keen on the information he's dishing out? So keen that they're lining up and pre-ordering his book?
Well, let's face it, Canada is a monarchy. King Charles is our head of state. I think that the death and funeral in September of Queen Elizabeth had an enormous impact upon people. The royal family's role, I think, in the Canadian psyche, it's a very important one, and people are curious. On top of this, of course, there is this element of what you say, scandal. What are we watching here? Is this really somebody who's making a real life for himself, or is this a train wreck in the process of happening? And I think people are quite curious about Harry and what's going on. I know I am.
Yeah, we know scandal does sell. His accusations against the monarch are strong. There are a lot of them in this book. What does all of it do to the Canadian perception of the monarchy?
Well, I think it's a double-edged sword as far as Harry is concerned. This is somebody who grew up in the royal family. He's had a life of a great deal of privilege. He inherited from his mother also a great deal of money, and he decided to walk away from it. Well, fine. The royal family said, you want to do that, that's fine. He said that he wanted to get away from publicity and that he wanted to have a quiet life. He also said he wanted to be able to make money on his own. And you look at what he's done, and he's basically commercialized his own life. He's turned himself into a celebrity. He gets interviewed by Oprah. He makes a documentary about his personal life. He writes an autobiography which is based upon psychotherapy, it would seem. And he's turning on his own family. What are you to make of this? Somebody who is basically profiting from what? Discussing backstairs gossip about his own family. I think it's a double-edged sword. I think, frankly, in many ways, people may end up becoming more sympathetic to the King and the Prince and Princess of Wales than to Harry in the end.
Yeah, I mean, whatever your opinion is, it sure is a talker. Everywhere I go, people seem to be talking about it. Peter McNally, Professor Emeritus at the McGill University School of Information Studies. Thanks for being with us tonight.
Thank you so much.
Hot on the heels of a stiflingly warm summer and fall, scientists are confirming what many have already suspected. Last year was one of the hottest in recent memory. What it means for Canada moving forward, next.
He looks and acts like any 3-year-old, but Amar has already lived through more upheaval than most of us encounter in a lifetime. Because his country died the year he was born, and as a Muslim Croatian, he is no longer welcome in Bosnia. So last night, his family was amongst the first of 100 Bosnian refugees who will arrive in Vancouver over the next month. Part of Ottawa's plan to bring over 500 men, women, and children from the former Yugoslavia. And while Amar will probably never even remember his past, his family will never be able to forget the civil war they left behind.
Because it was so sudden. They were taken from everything they had. They had house, they had friends, they had relatives, and suddenly it was taken. They were cut off in the middle of their life. From all of these things, the husband was taken to detention camp. They don't know why, where, and she said basically it's hard to forget 7 months of being unsure where he is, if he's dead or alive.
And while the men were being starved and tortured, the women and children lived in refugee camps. It is a life they led only weeks ago. The men don't want to talk about the details. No one wants to use their full name. And for all of them, there is a sense of unreality to being in Vancouver.
The experiences are so devastating, they are not able to speak about this. I also mentioned that the way they appear may be misleading because they keep quite a brave front and they are quite resilient. So
they're hiding a certain amount of pain.
Of course, yes. Yes. It's a degree of pride that they have, not letting the enemy know they are kind of defeated.
Still, these Muslim Croatians are very lucky people. As accepted refugees, Canada has agreed to financially support them for a year.
We'll help them look for work. We'll help them look for an apartment. We also provide them with living allowances, including rent and the necessities for a maximum of 1 year through the federal immigration budget. And we also set up their first apartment, from furnishings to furniture.
And while they are grateful and excited, they are also fearful. Because while there are some things that seem very similar here, do they know who Batman and Robin are and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles? And does any of that make...
Yes, yes.
You've heard of all that?
Da.
Still, starting over is always frightening. Are you looking forward to going to school?
Of course.
Yeah. What are you looking forward to?
What?
What's good? What do you think is?
I don't know.
Are you scared?
Little.
Deborah Goebel, CBC News, Vancouver.
The North American Leaders Summit is happening in Mexico City. The leaders of Canada, the U.S., and Mexico have a number of issues on the agenda, from trade and inflation to the war in Ukraine and migration. CBC's David Cochran is there.
A one-on-one with the U.S. president before the broader summit begins.
What we should be doing, and we are doing, is demonstrating the unlimited economic potential that we have when we work together.
A chance to discuss economic cooperation, but also a moment for new pledges on the crisis of the moment. Canada has agreed to buy a U.S.-made air defense system to send to Ukraine, answering the pleas of Volodymyr Zelensky, whose country faces seemingly endless Russian bombardment from above.
You and I have been working so closely on significant global issues, whether it's the pressures of China and Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine and the need to continue to stand up strong for democracy.
The two countries have also found a resolution to the problems plaguing the Nexus program, which speeds up travel across the Canada-U.S. border. The way the program operates will change, but processing offices will reopen, and the backlog of applications will be sorted. The broader summit is focusing heavily on economic cooperation, fueled by a shared strategic appetite to reduce the reliance on countries such as China in critical sectors. The three leaders plotting a course to build out continental supply chains in key areas such as semiconductors, electric vehicles, and critical minerals. This was the Prime Minister's first face-to-face meeting with the U.S. President of the new year. A second is set for just 2 months from now, as Joe Biden has accepted an invitation to visit Canada in March. David Cochran, CBC News, Mexico City.
At least 17 are dead in a string of California storms, with more destruction on the way. How extreme weather and climate change go hand in hand after the break. To California now, where at least 17 people are dead in a string of storms. More bad weather is on the way. For years, the state has been gripped by severe drought, but as the CBC's Susanna De Silva tells us, now the issue is too much rain, dropping too fast.
Why didn't you try standing off these railroad ties?
Stephen Quat is trying to figure out his next move.
I'm going to hike out of here soon.
Swim might actually be a better description, though at least now the water isn't completely covering his car. His son was coming home up the narrow LA road last night when he saw a wall of mud.
So he quickly, like in Die Hard 2, where they blew the tunnel and the water's coming down the tunnel and he's backing up at 100 miles an hour. That's what he did to back up from the mud flow and get up to the other side of the street, which is higher.
You can see the level of the water. The cup holders are full of water.
Scenes like this played out all over California. Residents and neighborhoods cleaning up again after the most recent storm dumped as much as 35 centimeters of rain in 24 hours.
I thought at 5 o'clock we had it licked. I mean, I really thought we had it licked. And it just came out of nowhere everywhere. We worked hard the last week to make sure that this didn't happen. And it was just...
It flooded an RV park, washed out highways, and led to dozens of rescues, including the people inside 2 cars swallowed up by a sinkhole. For some, cleaning up is a far too familiar routine.
It was rising about 2 feet per hour, and we experienced this on New Year's Eve, so we kind of had our markers for, sort of 22 feet, but it kept on rising, and it did get quite scary.
Residents lined up on a major highway waiting for it to reopen to go home after evacuation orders were lifted for parts of Santa Barbara, including Montecito. 5 years ago, almost 24 people were killed when mudslides raced down fire-scarred hills.
I was here when the mudslide occurred 5 years ago, and I remember how everything was closed for weeks.
One of all my friends passed.
And a temporary break in the weather won't last long. Another storm is churning in the Pacific and expected to arrive Wednesday.
That's Susanna De Silva reporting tonight from California. Coljeet, I know you've been tracking what's happening there, so what's the latest?
So just like she left off with, there's another system coming on Wednesday. It's coming for Wednesday. It's 72 hours of intense rain, 20 to 30 millimeters of rain in parts of California around Sacramento. I'm going to start this now just so you can see how quickly it's going to accumulate over the next couple of days. And by the end of Saturday evening, upwards of 100 millimeters of rain for northern parts of California. Sacramento's just around here. Yuba City is going to get a ton of rain as well as San Jose. And then the outskirts will be sitting around 20 to 40 millimeters of rain, so lots more on the way, a few more systems. So flood warning still in effect. We're going to really have to see what happens here in the next 72 hours. Here in the Lower Mainland, another humid day. It was dry. We didn't see any rain. 7 degrees at the airport right now and in Pitt Meadows as well on the North Shore. 6 degrees in Abbotsford. Here's a few notes from today. Today's high was 10 degrees, way above average. Like I mentioned, very humid. 85% today. It was 76 yesterday, so it got quite humid today. Overnight, we're going to see some fog patches rolling in, lows down to 3. And as I mentioned, rain is returning. We're going to see about 90 millimeters in the next 72 hours. And here's how it breaks down across the 7-day forecast. Starting tomorrow, 10 or 15 millimeters, light showers, turning to heavy rain for Thursday and then Friday as well. 20 to 30 millimeters for sure, up to 40 millimeters at higher elevations like Port Coquitlam and the North Shore. And then light rain takes us into the weekend, about 10 millimeters each day. And then light rain also takes us into the start of next week. So today, I really hope everybody got outside, got a little bit of dry sunshine, because this is what is on the forecast for the next 7 days at least. Lots of rain coming, Anita.
Oh, great. Okay, thanks, Coljeet.
You're welcome.
And looking at the opposite type of weather, 2022 was the 5th hottest year on record. That's according to experts at the European Union's climate monitoring program. That fits a trend. The last 8 years have been the 8 warmest ever recorded. As Jayla Bernstein explains, that is adding urgency to calls for Canada to get ready for what could come next.
That is insane.
2022 was a year of extreme weather, with significant climate anomalies spanning the globe. Floods submerged a third of Pakistan. Europe had its hottest summer on record. And Fiona tore a path of destruction through Atlantic Canada. Now, the Copernicus Climate Change Service says it was the 5th warmest year ever recorded, around 1.2 degrees higher than the pre-industrial average. Making that all the more concerning, 2022 was a La Niña year. Those are typically cooler.
If we didn't have that atmospheric oscillation in place, then the temperature would have been even warmer than we observed.
Emissions continue to rise, and the Earth is on track to hit 1.5 degrees warming within the next decade. But experts say hitting that point doesn't have to mean staying there.
It is not a make or break, it's not a cliff edge. So every fraction of a degree matters.
Fiona was a turning point in Port aux Basques, Newfoundland, says this local newspaper publisher.
I could probably accurately count on one hand the number of people in my community beforehand who'd ever spoken to me or mentioned climate change in public. Now, I wouldn't even begin to guess because everybody's aware of it.
It's a sign of how urgently climate action and adaptation are needed.
We need to be better coordinated. That's for sure.
Canada's new climate adaptation strategy aims to address that, setting targets to prevent heat deaths, assess flood risks, and improve disaster response.
The infrastructure that we're living with has been designed decades ago, if not centuries ago, so is not fit for purpose for the climate that we have right now, let alone the climate that we will face in the future.
Hanging over all of this, Canada's climate is warming twice as fast as the world average. There's a lot to do and little time. Jayla Bernstein, CBC News, Montreal.
Well, if you've been thinking about the end of the world, you're not alone. There's a whole community of people dedicated to preparing for doomsday. Meet them next.
So how did you end up writing music for Chris Brown, who was arguably one of the greatest R&B performers of our time?
For sure. Well, it's a blessing, first of all. Well, shout out to my bro Preem, got to shout him out because he made the call. Me and him were sitting in the studio, what was it, like probably about 5 or 6 months ago. I've already had the song like previously, and he was working close with Chris Brown at the time. He still is, actually, and he was like, Chase, you got any records that could work for him? So long story short, we played him like probably about 10, 15 records. Chris liked them. He was like, yo, these are dope. But he's like, so I said, yo, let me play this last record, and it ended up being Psychic.
You can't go anywhere without hearing Psychic. It's on the Billboard charts. Yeah. It's bumping everywhere. And you wrote that song. So tell me about that process and creating this hit.
End of the night, we thinking that, okay, yeah, we should just wrap it up. I would say, you got any beats? And he plays me the Psychic beat. And put it on, and the way I write is we just go in melodies first. We got the hit melody pocket, and we just started getting the words to it, and Psychic, there you go. Yeah. As long as you stay, I'll stay.
So for people that are unfamiliar with your music and your talent, can you talk to us about your journey and when you started out in your career and just how far you've come? For
sure. Well, I started right here in this house. From a young age, I started from the age of 5, started getting into music, started mastering it by singing by 12, and I've been at it ever since, Moved to Toronto, did some music with Cardinal. That was the big first break, first big song was top 10 radio. The song was called She Knows, actually. And moved to LA and then signed my publishing deal, and I've just been going ham ever since, yeah.
Will you be attending the Grammys this year?
10,000%, sure.
How exciting is that moment for you to, be attending the Grammys as someone who is nominated for an award?
Going back to, like I said before, it's like the feeling, I can't explain it. It's just a feeling that you can't explain. It's just dream come true, yo.
You're from North Preston, you're based in Toronto and LA, so what does it mean to you to represent your community?
Well, it means everything. It's like, that's why I always stand, like my record label, O2 Entertainment, which means 902, but it's short for 902, which is O2. I took the 9 off, just a slang that I say. So, like, I rep this all day fully. It just, like I said, it means the world to me, man. So, yeah.
Best of luck at the Grammys.
Appreciate it, appreciate it, appreciate it.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
Ring in the Year of the Rabbit with CBC Vancouver at the annual Chinatown Spring Festival Parade on Sunday, January 22nd. Join us along the parade route and celebrate the Lunar New Year with fun and festivities for the whole family. Enjoy traditional lion and dragon dances, marching bands, and martial arts performances. Learn more at cbc.ca/BC.
With increasing disasters and seemingly constant bad news, some people can't help but to think of the end of the world. But for others, doomsday preparation isn't a fanatic cult or a far-right dream. CBC takes you inside the lives of those who think preparation is only a smart decision.
Worried about a calamity or extinction level event? Wolf Starchild is your guy.
So in this kit, we will start a fire today with no matches whatsoever, simply using a knife.
And Wolf, and yeah, that's his real name, he's a prepper and spends a lot of time teaching others how to survive the worst.
A huge paradigm shift happened during the pandemic.
Shall we make some fire?
All right, so make your first fire. Let's see if you can light it up.
There we go.
There we go, very nice. The people that came for our courses to take courses like learning how to split wood, learning how to survive, learning how to be out in the woods, then shifted to, oh my God, I'm scared. I need these skills to protect my famany.
And what what are they thinking? Like,
most of those people
societal
were like,
collapse?
Society collapse is what they were concerned about.
2, 1, fire.
The prepper movement isn't new. Rooted in Cold War fears of an apocalypse. But recent big fires and floods, civil disorder, plus the war in Ukraine have put the movement on the radar, encompassing more than just a fringe element. Look no further than Costco, which sells a prepper's pallet of food for a year.
This is going to sound totally reasonable to some people, like a thing they should do, and others are going to think you're crazy.
That's right. Well, neither is wrong.
Okay.
Indeed, there are still guns and ammo survivalists, sometimes with roots in the far right. They fear a civil war, believe government itself is the threat.
Is that the community today?
There's people like that in it. Absolutely there is. Self-reliance as a whole attracts that type of person to it. It definitely does. And that's not to say that certainly everybody is like that. It's very, for me, prepping and the prepping that we teach is practical, right? Again, your car goes off the road, you're now in a prepping situation. Right?
But for all preppers, there are limits.
The first rule of prepping is we don't talk about prepping.
And why is that?
The reason is because many preppers believe it makes them a target.
The question is, when does being prepared become being paranoid? In northern BC, Alicia Atkins says living rural means being prepared. She's happy to show us her woodpile with years of fuel, a large greenhouse, and a freezer full of meat.
Show me what you got.
So we've got some deer burger here. Lots of deer, lots of moose.
Yeah.
Rows of canned food, sprouts which will produce over the winter. Seeds, she says, are her most valuable possession.
Tomatoes, corn, beans, peas, cabbages, lettuce.
What is this to you? I know it's a...
Security.
Oh.
Security. Yeah. So these are definitely very valuable to me.
Could you do 10 years here?
We have our heat in place, hunting's available, fishing's available. We have access to water. We could do 10 years.
Alicia worries about food shortages, economic collapse too. Her plan, though, involves her neighbors.
Because we do rely on our community. There's a lot of trade and barter that go around here.
Yeah, tell me about that.
So for example, if I want livestock, I can grow fruit trees that produce food, but I might not have the pigs. So I can find someone that does have the pigs and trade them fruit trees. Good job. So sit pretty.
Trade and barter also cuts government out of the transaction. But for all the stockpiling and planning,
Come on, show your muscles. You got it. You got it.
Alicia thinks she's less prepper, more of a homesteader, relying on herself, her family, and her land.
So what are you?
Prepared, I guess, which is kind of the same as a prepper. Sustainable, self-sufficient.
I don't know. What's the stigma around that?
When I think of a stereotypical prepper, I think of someone that has a bomb shelter and is collecting artillery or they're almost militant about it.
Yeah. And they're ready to cut off from the world.
They're ready to cut off. Yeah.
Is that you?
No.
They exist, though, like in the U.S., with underground fortified bunkers.
Change the image that we have as crazy people.
Paul Rodriguez is worried about getting robbed, so doesn't want to show his face. Not unusual in the community.
So, I'm a normal guy. I go to the gym. I got a mortgage.
Paul's an urban prepper. He lives in Toronto. And it was the city's ice storm in 2013 where power was cut for days that convinced Paul prepping was imperative.
I was at home with my power generator, watching DVD movies, cooking my food, and then my neighbor struggling. He got a baby. He couldn't boil the water for the formula for the baby. So I told him, buddy, I'll give you an extension. Go ahead.
And what's this that's strapped to you?
So this is a scanner that I use to get my local news. My EMS, my police, firefighters, they have so many news that they don't get to the TV. So local stuff.
It's like situational awareness for you.
That's it. Yeah. We got the first aid for minor cuts. So you fill it up with water, you put this place to the sun, and it gets hot.
Paul's got a go bag ready the instant he needs it, complete with an axe.
This is if I need to carry a gun. This is
He didn't bring his guns to meet us, but he has them.
Everyone in the house has a bug-out bag. My kids, my wife, myself.
His biggest fear? Riots, even nuclear accident or attack.
And prepping is an entire lifestyle. So
Wolf thinks everyone has a little prepper in them.
You can get as deep into it as you want, so you can be like the super hardcore off-grid guy who owns a bug-out bus, makes his own clothes.
Yeah, but
that's also me.
That is you. Yeah.
An investment, many preppers will say, expecting they'll need it.
That is David Common reporting tonight, and that is it for our show. Thanks for being with us on CBC Vancouver News, and we'll see you tomorrow.